Good morning and welcome to a review, mostly a review, of Monstrous Regiment by Terry Pratchett. I've also got some housekeeping stuff I'm going to say at the end, but this is mostly a review for this wonderful, wonderful book. Now, this is far from a first time read. I have been reading and rereading this book ever since it came out and ever since I first purchased it. As with all the Terry Pratchetts, really, at least all the later ones. This one was a bit of an exception for me in several different ways. So, for a start, while I had read all the Terry Pratchetts, and by the time Monstrous Regiment came out, I had started purchasing them new and even pre-purchasing. This was the first time that I was so excited for a book by Terry Pratchett, possibly by anyone, that I actually purchased a hardcover. I don't normally like hardcover books. I like soft covers, and you can see all the rest of the Terry Pratchetts lined up on this shelf behind me, and almost all of them are paperbacks. This one I made an exception for because I was excited for it, and once I had purchased it, it also became my favourite Terry Pratchett. It is the one that I've read the most often. Now, up until this one, there'd been a few favourites. Reaper Man and Mort were two big favourites. I think the first of the Witches series, and those ones are ones that I read and reread and reread to the power of nth. And then that was displaced by Monstrous Regiment, which has got to be by far the most frequently read Discworld book that I own, and possibly it would tie with Strata for the most read Terry Pratchett that I own. There were so many things about this book that I really loved, and I've always been surprised by how, if you can say a Terry Pratchett book is underrated, Monstrous Regiment seems to get far less love than many of his other books. And I really don't see it. I think it's magnificent, but it is a bit unusual compared to some of his other books. It's practically a standalone. There's one character, His Grace Samuel Vimes, makes an appearance at the end. But this is essentially a standalone book with standalone characters making a standalone point. Is it exactly a standalone point? I'm not sure. Anyhow, Monstrous Regiment is named after... It's a quote, misquote, commentary, I guess, on something written by the well-known amongst certain social strata reformer who was Scottish, John Knox. John Knox had very strong opinions about what the world should and shouldn't be. And if you've ever read any sort of social sciences, I did criminology, you've probably encountered Knox before. You may not like him very much. He had strong opinions about the world, including this quote: "The first blast of the trumpet against the monstrous regiment of women." It's a polemic work, and it was published in 1558, and what it was essentially is Knox arguing against female monarchs, because female monarchs or women doing anything that is powerful is contrary to the Bible, at least in Knox's opinion. I feel like he hadn't read the Old Testament with any great clarity, but anyhow, which I have done, in fact, most of it. So the whole notion here is that monstrous in this context means unnatural, and Knox thought it was unnatural for women to do these sorts of things, which brings us to Monstrous Regiment, where Terry Pratchett has what I'm going to say is a huge amount of fun with this concept. So, Monstrous Regiment is about this tiny country of Borogravia. None of these countries are real countries, but each single one has elements of reality from countries in the real world and actual historical details. The fact that they're slippery and you can't always put your finger on what country Borogravia is sourcing things from, what events the Battle of the Valley of Neck is sourcing from, I think that's a real bonus for me in the reading of Terry Pratchett. Belgravia is at war with Slovenia, and always has been, in one way or another, for one reason or another. But no one admits that the war is not going well. And this is partly because Belgravia's national pastime is essentially fighting with all its neighbours, but Slovenia in particular. And over the years, soldier material has decreased in Belgravia. There aren't many young men left. Recruiting parties no longer find any young men to recruit. The few young men that may have survived previous wars or escaped the recruiters flee. And women, of course, are not considered because Belgravia has the god Nagan. Nagan and Naganitic law completely control this country, and Nagan it becomes clear as you go through the book, more than slightly insane. He sends down abominations to the people. Among the things that the people abominate are women wearing men's clothes, and they can't own things. They can only things that are for women, like jewellery, clothes, and a few other bits and pieces. But property they can't own. And that leads us to this story. We start as Polly Perks cuts off her hair, which is an abomination unto Nagan, and dresses in her brother's clothes. An abomination unto Nagan is women wearing trousers, and sneaks out the back of the Duchess, her family's inn, in order to join the army and go find her brother Paul, who enlisted a year ago. Paul is a bit simple, but he's strong, and he's the only one who can inherit the Duchess. Which brings us to the Duchess. Nagan is the god, and Naganetic law is how you live. But most people have kind of backed away from praying to him because he's so clearly insane. Instead, they pray to the Duchess. The Duchess is the physical ruler of Belgravia, but no one has seen her for many, many years. She's apparently in mourning for her husband who died 50 years ago. And there are some rumours circulating in the world that maybe she's actually dead, but people pray to her. They call her the Little Mother, and since Nagan is too far off and unlikely to listen, they pray to her in the hopes that she will intercede with Nagan and they will be allowed to live another day, as it were. Anyway, Polly Perks has been practicing. She starts off with advantages in this direction, being quite flat-chested, and she has worked in the bar at the Duchess all these years, so she's observed young men, how they behaved, and she's ready to do her best to mimic that and join up, which she does, under Sergeant Jackrum, who is not the huge figure that's the troll right at the back, but the larger figure on the cover. This illustration is really good as well. Anyhow, I don't think it's a spoiler after all these years to say that once she joins a squad of bits and pieces and fragments going to the front to be trained to be the last intake of soldiers. This was published in 2003, by the way, which is why I believe it's hard to spoil. She slowly finds out that more of the miscellaneous people in her squad are women. Hence the Monstrous Regiment. The unnatural regiment full of women who've joined up for a whole heap of reasons. This is one of the best stories that Terry Pratchett ever wrote, in my opinion. I think it's great. The fact that he's put so much social commentary about what women are and what women aren't, what they can and can't do, and how they've been treated by various anachronistic laws and medieval religions. The way he does it, though, is so funny. I don't actually know if Terry Pratchett ever served in an army, but he got so much about small things right and is able to be humorful about writing about them. Okay, what else was Monstrous Regiment, as well as becoming my favourite book almost immediately? It's a bit of a division way. I reread it most recently in 2022 when I did a buddy read with my sister and we read all of the Discworlds in sequence. We didn't quite make it. This is number 31, the internet tells me, in the Discworld series. It's also for me on that balancing point. Terry Pratchett always wrote satire. He always saw humanity and the world, and he picked apart the idiocies and the strangenesses and made fun of them. often very, very subtly, with a huge amount of information, just an awe-inspiring knowledge of the world and so many small details of it in each of his books. But the early ones, The Colour of the Magic, The Light Fantastic-ish, they were more humour and more satire and kind of zany. Now, Monstrous Regiment came out, if I'm not mistaken, a couple of years before his Alzheimer's diagnosis came in. But it's on that borderline where they become really dark. The last of his Discworld books, like, I don't know, Thud, for example, are adult, dark, and wonderful in the way that 70 to 90% dark chocolate is wonderful. Whereas the early ones are probably more like a praline or something. But Monstrous Regiment is on the verge. He's already got there. William de Worde, who appears in one of the other books as the first newspaper Ankh-Morpork ever got, also appears in this. Samuel Vine from the City Watch also appears. He's a bit of a Deus Ex Machina, but it works. There is nothing about this book that doesn't work, in my opinion. So, have I fangirled enough of Monstrous Regiment and Terry Pratchett? If you have not read Terry Pratchett, where have you been for the last few decades? But whatever. And you have struggled with The Light Fantastic and The Colour of Magic, which some younger readers have. And if you can't quite catch the tenor of the thoughts, but you don't want to dive into what you think of as a series, this is essentially a standalone. If you've read previous ones, that's fine. But if you want to read it on its own, one of the best satires of warfare in not ancient times, but historical Europe in many, many regards. Great book. I will probably rave about this again in a year or two when I reread it. I try to limit my rereadings. I'm practically word perfect as it is. And what else to say about this? I put in some bookmarks. I think I probably meant to read some things out of it. But I don't remember what they are. Oh, I should have written notes. Oh, yes, this is great. Page 206. There was an old, very old Borogravian song with more Z's and V's in it than any lowlander could pronounce. It was called Plogvuhedzas. It meant the sun has risen, let's make more. You needed a special kind of history to get all of that in one word. It's great. Okay, enough about Monstrous Regiment. The alleged reason for this video. A couple of people have asked me if I have actually just read all the books that I review. Yes, I do read fast. But you often don't see them just as I have finished reading them. You'll probably see this a few days after I've finished reading it. I'm going to Melbourne for a few days. There may be a book haul after that. I've got high hopes. In the meantime, I am reading Twilight Beach by Terry Dowling. I loved Rhinoceros so much that my fingers kept being magnetically drawn to this beautiful book, which I will review when I've finished. I'm about halfway through and loving every second and every gorgeous phrase. And also, in passing, I will mention again The Reassembled Man, which I have been very kindly invited to read at the end of May and discuss with the elusive, exclusive, I've forgotten what the third E stands for, Book Society. So thanks, Jake from Pulp Mortem, for inviting me. I'll include a link to that so you can wait for it. Thanks for watching. Read good books. Terry Pratchett, I will not hesitate to say every single one is a good book. Bye.